Alright, how about another lock that contains security pins? But this time, enough of that foreign-made stuff, enough Tiffons and Bergwachters and Abus locks. How about something made in the States? And I've got this upside down. I'm almost ashamed. I really hesitate because I'm almost ashamed to turn it over. But yes, we're going to be looking at a master lock. Now, this is not a typical master lock. In fact, this might be one that you would consider adding to your collection because there's a lot of things we can learn from this particular one. Before we do that though, let's make sure it's going to work. I got the key for this. It is a new lock. Make sure it functions. And there we go. Now what I want to show you from the get-go on this one, and this is also true for American locks and some of the other masters, is you'll notice that it really takes quite a turn. There's under a lot of spring tension in there, and I'll show you why this is important in a minute, because you can actually pick this thing and never know it. So be aware that there's a lot of torque, and then you have to pull this hasp to get it out. Again, if you're picking these like off of a door or something legally, you have to do those two actions. You have to turn your pick very strongly and pull down on the lock in order to get it unlocked. So many times I've had these things picked and not known it, and I'll show you why. Another thing we can learn from this lock, and what makes it an extra challenge, is if you look very closely inside of the keyway, you'll notice we got some things we need to deal with. We have the thickness of this plastic weatherproof housing, so that's a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And then we have the thickness of this armor plate, which holds our core in. So when you add those two things together, there's an extra roughly 1/4 of an inch in depth that's going to provide quite a challenge for us to overcome. And this is probably the biggest mistake that I see people making when they deal with this lock. I'll show you why. If someone decides to take a normal tension wrench, bottom of the keyway, and just put it in there like they always do, this particular lock, it will seize up almost every single time. You will think you're putting tension on the core, but in fact that tension tool is wedged in the bottom, and you can see I'm really torquing it, and that thing is going nowhere. In fact, it's wedged in there. We can't even hardly shake it out of there. So what do we need to do? Well, the other mistake I see people trying to overcome is they'll use a top of the keyway tension wrench, and here is an example. This is one I made. It's got little serrations on it to help grip most locks, but unfortunately not this lock. Again, if I try to put that, if we look very closely here, if I try to put that into the keyway, you can see it doesn't quite reach. It's level, but it doesn't quite reach because of that extra 1/4 inch we have to overcome. And so here's the biggest mistake people make. They will angle it. They will apply tension, and so we're going to have it at an angle, and they can get it to work. You can do it, but you're going to be sticking up like that. And at some point, all it takes, usually when you've almost got them picked, you're going to put a little bit of downward pressure on this thing, and out it's going to come. And whatever, you might have set 4 pins, and bam, you've just lost them. You've got to begin again. So if you're going to use one of these top of the tension keyways, make sure it's an extra long one so that it will sit level and you won't accidentally push it out. What I do, I have a purpose-built pick for these locks that have this armor and the extra depth. And this started life as a Peterson tension wrench. I've got a bunch of these because I usually will modify them. And this one has been modified a little bit. First of all, I've bent it because I like to work with my finger around the lock. I don't like it straight up in the air. For me personally, it's just not so comfortable. The other thing is these come 80 thousandths of an inch thick, which won't fit into most keyways. So if you're going to use them, at least the thicker one, the original pry bar, you have to, if I get it to focus, you've got to file off a little bit to thin it down to fit your target lock. And that's what I've done here. And you can see it's quite long, and even better, it has a little notch there. So it will actually sit outside of the keyway and not bind up that first pin. And you can see it sits level. I get my hand around it here. It sits level. It sits in the keyway almost perfectly, and there you go. So it's not perfect. I don't think for these particular locks there is a perfect tool, but it's the best that I can come up with. If you come up with something better, please let me know. I will adopt it in a heartbeat. Okay, now that we've overcome the hard part of the Master 911, let's see what we can do. And as I said, these are not normal cores. These do contain high security pins, and we just have to overcome them. The way we overcome them is we're going to find the binding pin first, and we're going to get ourselves a false set, just like any other lock. So no secret to it. And so normally I go to the rear. Now when I have top of the keyway, I could slide to the bottom and go to the rear, but as I stuck this pick in there, I noticed that first pin seems to be binding, and I touched it, and it feels like I've already gone to false set, and that was not part of my master plan. It just worked out that way. So let's see if that is true. Feels like I am. I'm already at false set. So the hard part is done. Pure luck. This is not a lock we can get false set by rocking. It just will not work on this style of lock. We have inside of there, I believe these are serrated pins or perhaps spools. I can't remember. Okay, we're going to move along. We're going to pull, and we're going to find the binding key. Now, if you look closely, you can see the entire core is moving. That's typical master lock quality, so don't let that freak you out, and don't mistake that for counter rotation. Okay, pulling. I got counter rotation on pin number 4, so we're going to push him up. There we go. And my tension wrench seems to take a little bounce there. There's quite a violent set of that pin. Moving up to the other pins. Looks like number 3 got him set. Takes very light tension. Notice this tension wrench, I'm barely touching it. But you'll also notice that occasionally, after I make a set pin, I'll apply tension to it. Now, why would I do that? If you've watched other people picking American locks, like Wizwazzle has the best example, if you've ever watched him pick one, he is constantly flexing that finger. And that's because he's learned, just like many of us has learned, that we have to test that spring tension after we set every pin, because if we simply depend on light tension, we might have this lock picked and never know it because we never tested it. So after every pin on this lock, we're going to test to see if maybe we've picked it. Okay, there's another one that I set. There's another one, so we're going to test tension. Okay, start in the back again. Another one. Okay, I'm going to release and start again. I think I might have overset one. Come back up here and set that first one because we had good luck getting a false set out of him. Okay, he fell in there. I mean, just literally fell in with no input from me whatsoever. All I did was brush against him. This is quite a delicate pick, so I would classify this as more of an advanced. So if you haven't been picking very long, I recommend before you get too involved with this lock, develop your sense of feel on some of the other master locks before you try to get into this one. It can be quite frustrating. Okay, I got a major shift there in false set, so we're getting closer, and I'm testing to make sure we didn't pick it, and that I got to release that tension before I start looking for the next binding pin. And it's pin 4, so I'll pop him in again. And there we go, got a pick. Now here's where you can potentially lose it with these locks. When you push to against the spring, it is very powerful. You almost have to take your finger and hold your tension wrench in there, because if you push it and you're off center, you'll cam that tension wrench out and it'll fall out, and then the spring will throw it back and it'll be completely locked again. So I usually will reach up and I just grab it here, and then with my entire hand I'll turn it. Now you have to continue holding it and then pull the hasp out. If you turn it and then release while the hasp is still in, this lock will relock itself and you'll find yourself picking it again. So anyways, a couple of lessons I've learned there from the Master 911. It's a good lock. It just has a couple of idiosyncrasies you have to overcome. Anyway, good luck with it. I always enjoy picking it, and I seem to always relearn the same lessons, but there you go. Thanks for your time. I hope we didn't waste anybody's time. Everybody be safe, and please always stay legal.